Down the Biscayne.
Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs.
Down the Biscayne.
Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
Welcome back to 5 on the Floor. I'm Alex Toledo. I've got my guy Brady Hawk here with me. No Ethan tonight. Happy birthday to the boss man. I hope he's enjoying his night, and I hope he didn't watch this game because that's not the right way to spend your birthday, in my opinion. I think this team is not worth, watching on your birthday. So happy birthday, boss man. This one's for you. And shout out Leif as well. We had to give him a day off too. I think we could all use a break, and it's very fitting that after today, after a 118-113 loss, the team heads into the All-Star break with, what is it? Is it 4 straight losses now? I don't know if it's more, but so many bad ones, like for so many different reasons. We've already touched, obviously, on the Nets one. We touched on the Thunder one last night. Tonight was a very different thing. It wasn't, single-digit scoring fourth quarter, but it was blowing a game that you absolutely should have won. Even with the Heat missing Bam, missing Wiggins, missing Terry, which is probably a helpful thing for the Heat at this point. Sorry, Terry, it just is what it is. Even with that and the Heat not being a talented team in general, they should have won this game. No AD, no Kyrie, no Clay. The entire Mavs front court was gone. They were starting a guy who wasn't even anywhere near the rotation, and Omax Prosper, as their 5. Right, this is not one. The only front court player other than Prosper that played for the Mavs that's in the rotation was Najee Marshall. This is one where you have to take it, man. You have to take it, and as we head into the break, this is not one that we want to go on and on for. Also, we've gotten the directive from the birthday boss man to not keep doing these 40-minute shows on nights where nobody wants to hear about the Heat for 40 minutes. So we're going to try to stick to that here and go directly to the play of the game.
And now it's time for the X-Ray of the Play of the Day, brought to us by our friends over at Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services. Nelson and his team will bring the X-ray equipment and the staffing to you. If you work in a hospital or a medical office, get a consultation today at c-armandstaffing.com or give them a call at 561-891-9620. Their fleet of trucks at your service. Again, it's Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services, 561-891-9620. And now, the X-Ray of the Play of the Day.
So I went to the wrong one first here, but I just wanted to go ahead, own up to that. But it's fine. We're going to roll with it because that's what we're doing at this point. Like I said, we all need to break. All of us, media, players, coaches. It's been a long season already. They've got a whole other half season to go. But for this game, even with the way they lost, I want to give the play of the game to Kel'el Ware. I thought he's worth talking about here because that was an awesome play in the first half. Had a poster dunk, right? Awesome stuff. And Kel'el Ware, it feels like, was doing so much in that first half. Finished at halftime with 15 points, and in the second half, finished with 2 points. They completely shut that down. And I'm not just saying the Mavs defense, I mean the Heat themselves. It felt like they stopped going to it, and it was frustrating. I think Ware was having some defensive troubles down the stretch of the second half as well, and that's why he was kind of getting taken out of the game. Not to mention Kyle Anderson, my goodness, had an awesome game. We could talk about him later as well. Awesome game for him. So he was kind of the guy getting subbed in and out for Ware at times there down the stretch. Brady, what happened in the second half that, Ware wasn't able to continue that? Maybe not another 15 points, but how did he go from 15 first half points to 2 second half points? What needs to change there for him to keep that going at a consistent rate?
Yeah, I'll start with the first half. I was kind of saying earlier in this game, that there's been such a focus with incorporating these new guys that they made the trades for that I felt like they've kind of put Ware on the back burner a little bit. And I just feel like that can't happen. They have to prioritize him specifically on nights when they're fully healthy, when they have the real roster together. I just feel like he's the one who can benefit from that most when they have the attention of, Wiggins flying off a pin down, depending on his numbers or not, just the pure attention, or Bam, having it going right now, that they need to feed off that and prioritize Ware on the backside as a roller and all the stuff he's been doing good just as of late over the last few weeks. So they started doing that. I mean, in the first half, they made him a priority. They were finding him on the roll. They were just throwing the ball up top, letting him go get it. They were giving him post touches. He kind of found that little touch on that little post hook, that little push shot. He was just in a really good rhythm, it felt like, in that first half. Like they were legit playing through him. In the second half, you just saw a little bit less of it. The thing that stuck out to me is, I don't know if you saw the same thing, Alex, but to me, it just looked like he looked a little gassed. I'm watching him on a lot of these rebounds. Like I
literally
know
said the same thing on playback in the fourth quarter.
I know Spo saw, there was one possession I'm thinking of specifically where I saw him just allow 3 straight offensive rebounds from the Mavs. And I just know Spo saw that and was going to pull him. Like once he sees a young guy like that not give full 100% effort and look gassed like that, especially when you're a big man trying to get boards, that's just not going to cut it. So, it is a back-to-back. We are, as you said, heading toward an all-star break where I think even a young guy, even a 20-year-old is going to need a little bit of a break here. But I just thought he looked gassed in the second half. I just thought he was less active offensively because, one, they weren't going to him as much because of the fact that they shut him down. They were helping down. They were pretty much saying – it's why Tyler had better looks from deep in the second half. He was hitting them, but then it's not just Tyler you're worrying about. You're worrying about a lot of these non-shooters that have to shoot these threes, and that's kind of what happened in the OKC game as well. They just shut down the paint in a lot of ways. Let's talk about the OKC game for a second. They dominated the paint in the first half. They got there all game. Second half wasn't as much. This game, Tyler Herro, 17-point second quarter. He had 7 2-point makes. He totally found a flow. I think we could talk about Tyler. Having 40 points. Look, let me just say, I know I'm going off here on a little bit of a tangent, but having Tyler Herro score 40 points against a Dante Exum, Spencer Dinwiddie-led team on the other side, and you lose, I don't care who you don't have playing. I don't care if Bam's out. I don't care if Wiggins is out. If you get 40 from Tyler Herro on a night with that team on the other side, you have to have enough from your other guys or enough defensively in your rotation to be able to stop that. With that said, Tyler Herro, second quarter, got a bunch of twos. They were just dominating the paint once again. Mm-hmm. They started playing a little bit more outside in the second half because of that. It allowed Tyler to play more outside, but it was not for the rest of the team to start playing outside. It just felt like there's a trend here. I think out of all the trends, obviously there's the trend of them falling apart late in the fourth quarter. But there is a real trend that teams schematically try to push Miami out to the three-point line, which is not something they're used to, and away from the paint in second halves. They are better when they're able to kind of get to the basket, draw driving kicks and play out of that. And when they become perimeter oriented, when it gets to the fourth quarter, I'm watching this team dribble on the top of the key. I'm watching them run pick and rolls that are just getting flattened out. There's no more of those secondary actions, the pin downs, the mid post touches. Mm-hmm. It just feels like they run out of gas and run out of creativity late in games. And it's just leading to these debacles. So there's a lot to that. Like I said, we started with Ware there, but it just feels like the Ware example is a good example of what's happening across the board right now with second halves.
No doubt. I think it's a great point that you bring up as far as, the adjustments made there. It was, when a team sees a team like the Heat get out there and just have their way in the paint, guess what? They're going to try to mitigate that in the second half. And it's like you said, the Heat don't have so many shooters that you're just going to, you can play a strategy, you can play a game plan against the Heat that is more about limiting the paint and being okay with some of the shooters taking shots. Now, I'm not saying, give Herro or Duncan or even Burks wide open threes, but a lot of the other guys, they're probably okay with them taking a semi-open three with a late contest. I think you can get away with that against the Heat. Just kind of thinking of it from the other way around, throughout all these seasons during the Jimmy era, right? If I were to look, if it was the old Heat team with Jimmy playing this current Heat team, that's what I would say. It would be make sure that they don't get anything easy in the paint, and they're going to have to live with some of these other guys just making those shots. I think it's a problem for them. I think Tyler, specifically, his 3-point shot quality continues to go down. I think because of the fact that he's getting run off the line and he's like the one guy along with Duncan that teams are just not going to let have open shots over and over. And I think that's why, like, it was so nice to see him, like you mentioned, get going inside the arc there. And, you know, with his huge night, and then finally was able to get a couple of open ones there back to back to kind of get himself going from three. But, you know, so much of the work was inside the paint. And I think the Heat have to find a way to maintain that even after the team makes adjustments, because I'm not that big of a fan of the Heat being a team that launches a whole lot of threes and relies on that, because they're not good enough. Like, they had another rough shooting game tonight. And like I mentioned, their best shooters are not getting open shots because people are not creating advantages. Like, they don't have enough guys that create advantages and overreactions to find your best shooters open looks. And, you know, part of it, a big reason of it, is because Tyler and Duncan are your biggest shot creators. They're the guys who create the advantages. They're the guys who create the overreactions. So other guys are the ones getting found on these open threes that they're launching. Whereas Tyler and Duncan have to work and fight over screens and go off movement and take low quality ones. So yeah, like, I think there's a whole lot going on that has to do with their roster construction right now, where it feels like they end up hitting a limit in these games. And tonight, like I mentioned, it wasn't single digit fourth quarter. They scored 30 in the fourth quarter, but they're just an inconsistent two-way team as it stands. I think when they play their best players that they have right now, like when you're seeing Mitchell, when you're seeing Bam, when you're seeing Tyler, like, you start to see the identity of like, okay, they can be a really solid defense with Mitchell and Bam there. It's kind of like your perimeter guy. With Bam down in the paint, you can obviously play him next to Ware. The defensive identity, the vision is there. Offensively, they're hitting a ceiling every single time. It's just not enough. And I know I'm kind of rambling at this point, but so much of it has to do with the roster construction, unfortunately. And so with that, we've already started talking about him, so might as well just get to it. Let's go to the player of the game.
And now it's time for the A-Aggressive Insurance Player of the Night, sponsored by our friend Lynette. You can find her at insurancebylynette.com. That's with 2 N's and 2 T's, insurancebylynette.com. If you need car insurance, renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, or any other type of insurance, she's the person to go to. Based in Lauderhill, she services the entire Tri-County area here in South Florida, and she will make sure to get you the best deal. She'll probably talk to you about the Heat while you're at it. Reach out to her, insurancebylynette.com. And now, the player of the game.
Well, we already talked about him, Tyler Herro, with a 40-burger today, man. Very impressive game after, you know, a really rough stretch here where he was turning over the ball, not hitting threes. So that was kind of one of the bright spots from tonight's game from the Heat side. We've talked about him a little bit, and I want to go to you on him specifically here, Brady, but also Dante freaking Exum, dude. He wasn't the only good performer for the Mavs tonight, but he was by far the most effective. Dante Exum has maybe played like a handful of games this season, has missed most of the season with an injury. Not sure he's even played with Luka this season. Would have to look into that. That's how little he's played. He comes out tonight, 27 points on 11 of 13 from the field, Brady.
Yep.
How is that? How do you let Dante Exum cook you in that way?
Well, I can give one example. This might tie into the defending the house segment, so I won't go too crazy here. But there was a specific play where they doubled Spencer Dinwiddie for I don't know why. And he ends up getting a wide open. You got to
double Spencer Dinwiddie.
You have to. I mean, yeah, you're getting flashbacks here. He's the leader on the other side. But he ends up in a corner Dante Exum 3, I believe. And I think it was that one where Khalil Ware just like had a late contest and then it's a timeout and Spo walking out of the court. Those type of lapses just can't happen against teams like this. If you're going to say if it was against OKC the other night and you're in a close game, you double Shea and it ends up in a Isaiah Joe corner 3, whatever. Like we move past that. You're doing your job defensively to get it out of the best guy's hands. I'm not living with that when it's Spencer Dinwiddie. Yes, I know Dante Exum. You could probably live with that shot most of the time, but that's not Kyrie up there. So there was those type of things led to Dante Exum getting going. It was not all from 3. I think he only had 2 threes. I think he was 2 for 2 from 3. So it was a lot of stuff inside of him just being efficient. We could probably, I know a lot of people
from 2.
Yeah, I mean that itself. But it's like I think a lot of people want us to talk about the rotations again because they're limited in this game, obviously. But I do think there are certain decisions and lineups that we could probably talk about. I mean, the Mavericks at least were consistently scoring in this game. I mean, there was not a lot of restrictions from Miami defensively. It felt like, I mean, 34 points in that fourth quarter. Yes, Miami didn't put up 8. They put 30 up in this fourth quarter. They scored a lot more, but they were not that great defensively. I just felt like some of the lineups, yes, once again, they're limited. They're running these lineups when Kalel's not out there. It's Jovic at the 5. It's Kyle Anderson at the 4. There's running these smaller lineups that can match up with the Mavericks. Because the Mavericks, once again, had no bigs. Like they're playing so small. So, but you should have the ability to match up and defend a little bit. They're leaning into their shooting. I mean, late in the game, they're running Burks, Duncan, and Tyler.
Yep.
They're just isolating and getting shots that they wanted. That one on Max Christie when he took Duncan turnaround jumper, it was like, yeah, they're going to get those shots. But there was certain rotations. I know you said we'll hit on Kyle Anderson later, but I'm going to do it right now real quickly.
Do it.
He played really well. He had flashes in this game where he just kind of found a flow, and it was not pretty. Let's be honest. His game is never going to be pretty. I mean, you see the jumper, but there's the efficient things that he does in his game where I felt like Davon Mitchell's a guy that he sped up the game in a lot of ways in this game. Whether it was just bringing the energy, playing fast, finding those pockets of the game that they needed it. Kyle Anderson, I felt like, was the one part of this game that found a way to bring a calmness and a steadiness and just slow. And I know it sounds cliche to say he slowed the game down, but he did, because they found a trigger without Bam that they could put the ball in his hands in the mid post, slow things down, and really get into an action. So he was doing that, whether it was scoring initially off it, whether it was playmaking off it, whether it was shooting, getting an offensive rebound, putting it back in. He was really being active around the glass and in the paint. I was not a fan of taking him out there late. Out of all the ones that we could talk about, Tyler, not playing early in the fourth, or whoever you want to mention, whether it was Kalel not being in there for rebounds, or Nico, playing extended time when it probably wasn't his best game. I just personally, if I was to make one comment on specific rotations, I would have kept Kyle Anderson in, just because of what I said earlier. My biggest problem with this team late in fourth quarters is they kind of throw all the stuff out the window that got them to that point. It becomes so perimeter oriented. It becomes so pick and roll oriented, and they get away from the stuff offensively that gets them to that point. This is not an isolation team, and this is frankly not a pick and roll team. This is a paint touch, drive and kick, multiple actions type team. So when you get to that point in the game and you get away from that, I'm just not a fan of it. So I just thought Kyle Anderson was kind of one of the few triggers in this game where I was watching and I said, okay, they could get to that and find the next layer of the offense. So once they took him out, I mean, we saw what it got to. I mean, they were running certain lineups there, and it just felt like it was free flowing. It was just wild shots and just not great looks across the board. And that lineup also was not leaning defense, clearly. They were not getting stops, and it was not the greatest of individual defenders together. So it was just some interesting decisions. I'll ask you quickly because I know we're going to get to some other ones. We could probably save this. Actually, you know what? Cue up defending the house, because I have a question for you that we could play off.
Okay.
And now it's time for our Defending the House segment, sponsored by our friends over at The Real Estate Shop. You can find them at realestateshopfl.com. That's with 2 P's and an E, realestateshopfl.com, or at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. This is Javier Iglesias and Amanda Martin. They help buyers and sellers in real estate. They're nimble and protective of their clients. They service the entire Tri-County area. That's Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties with a proven on-market strategy. The Real Estate Shop sellers earn the most money in the shortest time frame because Amanda and Javier have a deep understanding of the local market. So check them out. Again, it's at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram, realestateshopfl.com, or give them a call at 954-268-9812. And now, who defended the house?
So the Heat had 10 players available in this game. 9 of them played. The one player that didn't play is somebody that defends the house, Haywood Highsmith. And just watching the way that they defended in this game throughout, I understand certain, some of the things that we talked about with certain guys like Kyle Anderson, I think, deserves the minutes here. Obviously, he started in this one. But I just want to ask you your opinion on Haywood not getting minutes in this game. Do you think he should be in the rotation in a game like this? I mean, we were just talking about how would he fit into the rotation when they're fully healthy with this team. Yes. And they have no Wiggins, no Bam, no Terry. I know what that means for some, but he's a part of the rotation in Spo's eyes here. So it's what I just don't know what Haywood's role is on this team. I'm curious to see what you think.
honestly something that we talked about on Playback as well. And of course, check us out there. Watch the games with us there. Playback.tv/5RSN. And you know, in a game like this, like you mentioned, no Bam. You know, you're missing your anchor as it is. You're missing Wiggins, who's a plus defender for you at the same position. Like you'd think that that would be a game where Haywood plays, no doubt, especially with a team like this that has had its point of attack issues. Yeah, like you've got Davion out there now. Yeah, I like what Kyle Anderson brings on that end. You know, Haywood, you need more than just one point of attack defender. And again, I like what Larson brings. He's still got a little bit of a ways to go before he's on Haywood's level. You know, so I'm not mad that Larson is getting minutes. I'm glad that they're trying to work him through it, and he's hit a couple threes the past couple games. Is really nice to see, because that's really like the one question for him. Because I think for a rookie, he's a solid defender, but that doesn't mean that I want Haywood out of the rotation necessarily. You know, and especially in a night like this, specifically, you know, with the guys that you have out, with Dante Exum absolutely cooking you inside the arc. It's not like, oh, he randomly hit 7 threes on you and got hot. No, you let that guy go 9 of 11 from the paint, a guy who hasn't played all season, and it's just frankly not like that. For as nice as, you know, Dante Exum is, he's not like that. That should not be a thing. I think Haywood probably should have played. I'm not usually the guy who's like, hey, the guy who didn't play is what would have changed this game. I absolutely think that they could have used Haywood, especially like just now the Mavs in a game like this, again, missing so much talent, just an absolutely depleted team, put up an 82nd percentile offensive rating on you in the half court at 109, and overall 77th percentile, 123 offensive rating. That's inexcusable, man. That's inexcusable for a team that is supposedly all about their defensive identity and trying to lean into that. Of course, missing Bam and Wiggins doesn't help there, but why are you shooting yourself in the foot even further by not playing this guy who's been your strongest perimeter defender for multiple seasons now? You know, I think it's 100% a valid criticism. And by the way, to your point, to what you were saying earlier, as far as Kyle Anderson, couldn't agree more. You know, he was really just stabilizing. I was calling him the big stabilizer on Playback because he kept just giving them like these easy paint points that they usually just don't have access to. And it doesn't matter how slow he is. He is really big. You know, he's tall and strong, and he has good touch. And not he's lengthy, man. He's got like a 7-foot wingspan. He can get that little floater off. He can get up the middies. Just in general, him playing like in that short paint area, I think is a strong suit. And you saw more of his game tonight. I think looked much more comfortable than he did in that debut where he was pressing kind of, and I just think taking bad shots. He was awesome tonight for you in the paint. And in the lineup that they leaned on for about half the fourth quarter, without Anderson, that lineup was a minus 14. The one with Mitchell, Burks, Herro, Jovic, and Ware. That lineup was a minus 14 with a minus 95 net rating. Just for the game, right? And then when you look at in the fourth quarter specifically, minus 12, which was the same lineup. So most of that minus for the game was in the fourth quarter, like specifically for that lineup with a minus 97 net rating. I think that to go back to it when it wasn't working and you were getting killed in the fourth quarter, they were getting whatever they wanted in the paint. You know, I didn't agree with it, specifically when Anderson was having such a good night. You know, if you wanted to keep wearing to try to, in a night like this with no Bam, you want to have him in a fourth quarter and have him work through it. I get that, but you shouldn't take out the guy who was like your second best form of offense in the second half, because Ware was not giving it to you at that point anymore. Outside of Herro, Anderson was their second best offensive player in that second half, and he's obviously a pretty strong defensive player, even if he is kind of slow. So again, the rotations don't decide everything, but I 100% agree that these are valid criticisms. And honestly, man, it's just really like it's been such a long season for Heat fans already, right? They've had to deal with so much that wasn't their fault, right? Just being like the children watching mommy and daddy fight with the Heat and Jimmy Butler, and it's like dragging on for months and months and months. Everybody's exhausted. The players, the coaches, the fans, everybody's exhausted. But now, like, having to watch this product where they're just blowing game after game after game, even if a lot of fans are probably excited for the thought of 2 lottery picks in this draft, it's still tough to watch, right? It's still tough to actually be watching this as If you're a fan who's out there just seeing the results and just wants the 2 lottery picks, I'm happy for you. But the fans actually sitting through this and watching every game, I feel for them, man, because it's just not a great product to watch right now. When they really lock in defensively, that's when I kind of like them the most. I think the brand of basketball is refreshing, but it's usually because they're playing mistake free, and it's usually just a spurt. Like, it's not going to last. That's the problem. They can't make these spurts last. They have to find some sort of two-way balance in the rotation, and I think that's going to be a challenge throughout the rest of the season. But that's enough for me there. I want to get – well, actually, we already did get to the last segment. I'm sorry. I already forgot you went to it. Shout out to you for audibling. Does remind me, the original thing that we were going to mention on Defending the House, speaking of point of attack defenders, was Davon Mitchell, man. Like, he had that awesome block, which probably would have been play of the night on just about any other night, because that was an incredible block there in the fast break after he was the one that turned the ball over, kind of got his lick back right away and got an insane block on a bigger player at the rim. Like, the energy that he brings, I think, has been so refreshing. Like, he's been such a silver lining here in this whole thing, where like his exact skill set, even though he's not like this game changer of a player, right? His set is what they needed so badly. And I mentioned this on playback, but it's like the things he can't do, you're not even worried about it, because the things he does do, was desperately needed. Desperately. And the way that he fights over screens relentlessly, the way that he gets up into guys, and then like a guy might hit him with a crossover and you think he's going to turn over the corner, and no, like Mitchell finds a way to recover. He does this little hop back into position on the defensive end. It's so incredibly like athletic and coordinated, and just like a lot of these guys can't do that. Like, he's so feisty out there, man. He is a definition of a pest. His offense has been fine too. Like, you mentioned earlier in the show, he plays at a fast pace there. He likes to push the ball, and I appreciate that. Like, I think that he could absolutely use more early transition plays, man. I think I appreciate kind of that verb that he plays with, where he's like, okay, I'm not just a 3-and-D point guard. Like, I'm going to try to get in there and create something for others too. And just in general, I really appreciated what Davian has brought there. Let me know if you want to jump in on that before we close here.
For sure. I mean, box score lovers are not going to love him. I mean, like, he's not going to be somebody that's going to like jump off the page here.
Box score lovers is Spo-esque right there. I love that. Box score lovers.
That's just what is it called? The untrained eye. That's what that is.
Untrained eye.
The untrained eye would not like Davon Mitchell looking at the stat sheet. But I will say, like, look, there's two guys that played 37 minutes tonight. It was Tyler Herro and Davon Mitchell. Like, if there was anything that was going to be obvious, was that Spo was going to love Davon Mitchell. I mean, that was going to be clear. I said this earlier to you guys as a joke in the chat, where I was like, Davon Mitchell would be the perfect player for the teams that were on deep playoff runs 2-3 years ago. And it's crazy to say 2 to 3 years ago now, but whatever it's been. Like, he would be the perfect player on like a really, like one of these good teams that's just, needing a guy that's going to do the dirty work and doing the stuff, the energy plays, as you mentioned, the one where he gets a turnover, goes down, gets the chase down block. It's so refreshing to watch somebody get over screens, as you mentioned, the way he does. He just really gets after it. The question of finding roles, and this is why I think my finishing take is I just really did. They don't play basketball for another week and a day. I think a week from tomorrow on Friday. They need to figure out, I know it's about, next man up. It's always been about that and about finding new guys and funneling different things, but they need to have a blueprint on what the rotation is going to be like, and specifically what lineups and, they can get to the play off each other. Because I'm looking at some of these where I think there are certain lineups that fit Davon Mitchell more, but you're going to see it be a little bit louder with some of the stuff of his role offensively when he's in some of these rough lineups. Like, they are really going to overhelp. I know he's capitalized on a couple threes over these last couple games. Like, he's not not confident. Like, he's going to take them. I just don't think it's one of those things that he's only going to shoot if he's wide open. It's one of those kind of slow type of shots. So you're not going to rely on it. But I just think it's not going to make sense unless you're playing him in the correct lineups. Like, if you're going to play him this much, you have to play certain things around him. If you want to go, as you said, to Haywood, I'm a fan of going Haywood Davion. Now maybe you could go a little bit more press and zone like you used to a year or two ago. You could play a fast defensive style. But if you're going to play Davion and Haywood, you better be playing the right guys around those guys. You better be playing spacers. You better be playing, the right guys that you can put in the bottom of the zone that can also space the floor offensively. So I think the overall thing here is like the All-Star break needs to be a time here. I understand that, there's a new direction with this team. We're talking lottery picks. We're doing all this stuff. But if they really are about winning and finding ways to get, put together wins here late in the season, there are certain trends it feels like they can get to. It's why I do wish they could have gotten, not just for the win aspect of these last two games, but just all of the team healthy, just so we can get an idea heading into the break of what they just get a little more film on them. Just get a little more film on certain combos on, the new guys and stuff. But the overall takeaways, I really do. I enjoy watching Davon Mitchell. I just like his game. I think he provides a fun energy. We always talk about, the defensive stuff, but I think the thing that's been the most energetic is just the fast style he plays. Like, he is fast. Like, after he gets a stop or there's a rebound and they push out, like, he can really push the pace there. He had one where he got on the break and found Nico for the dunk, and it felt like that was the point of the fourth quarter. It was like, okay, they finally – I think they went up 4 at that point. I think it was 100-96. I could be wrong. But at that point in the game, it was like, all right, well, they went to the slow pace part of Kyle Anderson. Then they went fast pace with Davon Mitchell and Nico. And from that point on, it just didn't feel like they had a pace. It just felt like they were just playing at the pace of the Mavericks and just, the stuff we already mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle this. It is funny to see that Davon Mitchell this quickly has become like a constant fan favorite, but he's also become like he's a locked in starter. It almost feels like they found this not only ability to close games and playing 37 minutes, but they found somebody next to Tyler that they like. But now it comes down to finding the right guys around them. Because if this is going to be the starting lineup, do you believe Wiggins, Bam, and Ware would be the best grouping around Davon Mitchell and Tyler? I don't know. I could probably make a case against it. I don't know I just don't think it makes the most sense offensively. Spacing wise, I just don't trust it for long periods. But if you're going to do it, you better be able to pull the lineups in quick leash and have one of those, substitution patterns. Teams do have it where, at 5 minutes, 6 minutes, probably 5 minutes into the game, you're already pulling your first player and you can get into a new look and try to get into a little more offense, then circle back with guy like Wiggins and others. So, as to use your words as I ramble on there, I think the main choice here is that just Spo and the coaching staff has to sit down and just figure out this rotation and substitution pattern stuff, because it feels like that's the thing we're coming away from most games talking.
Yep, no doubt. It feels tough not to talk about it at this point, and also it's one of those teams where when everybody is playing, there's always guys that you can point to and be like, hey, they should have played. Because they're a deep team. Like they're gonna have guys when everybody's healthy that aren't playing that people deserve. I mean, that people think play, and for good reason. Like, they have guys with different skill sets. And to your point, 100%, they have to figure out who's in and who's out, and what are the proper here. Like, we already talked about the fourth quarter lineups earlier, where you had Burks, Tyler, and Yoke be able to get away with that with Bam. Where it's just not there yet. For as much as I like him and everything he brings, for that to be a fourth quarter lineup, obviously there's no Bam tonight. So, there's limited options, but it's just not like, it's not going your way on the perimeter. Switch it up, right? You mentioned the lineup stuff. I mentioned I threw this whole thing on Discord earlier today, where it's like, I would still like to see that lineup that we all expected first made the trade, which was Tyler and Duncan with Wiggins, Bam, and Ware. And that's not to say that I haven't loved what Davon has brought. I have. Wouldn't be upset whatsoever if he remains the starter. He's been good, man. Like, I think it proves what we have been saying about Drew Smith, and somebody who would probably be starting if he was still playing, right? Very similar skill sets. Davon is a former lottery pick, so I think I was like, yeah, let's see what happens when I empower somebody like that, a talent like that. So I think it's exciting for Spo to have like these former high lottery picks to play with now. And so I'm okay with it. But, I think Tyler and Duncan causing overreactions really helps with the Bam and Ware spacing. I think it helps Wiggins too, because he's taking, the couple games he's played, is taking some really tough shots. I would like to get him some easier shots. And I think Herro and Duncan's, the overreactions they cause can help some of those spacing issues there. And as far as Davion, like I think he could really help with Ware, you know. And 100% what you mentioned is what I threw on earlier on Discord as well, like the idea of Haywood and Davion together, maybe with Ware on the back line. Like I really like that idea. You know, you cushion Ware with as much point of attack and wing defense, perimeter defense as you can, and then just see what happens. And I think you can really lean into defense on, you know, kind of with your bench units too, because I think the bench units have kind of been the Pandora's box of chaos for them, right? Like their starting units since the trade have been about neutral, more or less, and then the bench is kind of, you know, whether early or late in the game, at some point ends up being them over. So I think they've got to figure out those rotations. Nothing against Davion whatsoever. I just wonder if he could be better served with some of the bench units. It doesn't mean you never play him with some of those starters, right? It doesn't mean I never want to see that lineup. I still do. I like it. But they've got to do a little bit of tinkering here, because this is a roster where there's a lot of, you know, guys who lean heavily on one end of the floor more than others, and guys who, you know, I think complement each other if you find the right mixes. I don't think you should be playing 4 offensive leaning guys and then like Ware on the back line. You know what I mean? Like I think they've got to find a balance here. Like last game, for example, when most of the guys were healthy outside of Duncan and Harry against the Thunder, Wiggins and Mitchell only played with Bam, which is great. Like I love that defensive unit, but I was looking forward to having those guys thrown into the other units as well to help balance them out, you know? So like as much as I love Mitchell and Wiggins with Bam and Ware and all that and what they can get to defensively, I think they've got to mix it up and find the right two-way balance here with some of these units. It's a lot to ask for because it's kind of a roughly built team at this point with a lot of different playable guys, so there's no easy answers. But they've got to find some sort of consistency with the rotation within the next week or two. And with that, we're still going to end up close to 40 minutes. I'm sorry, Ethan. Maybe even for your birthday, I couldn't get it down to below 30. But that's where the reps come in, right? Same with Kalel, where, you know, had a rough 4th quarter showing. If you just, you know, you got to keep getting better with the reps, and that's what it's all about. That's what this team is all about now. It's a young team, all just worried about the reps. And even though Spo wants to win, it's going to be really tough. You know, it's the talent is what it is. Expectations are low. And even with that, it was really tough to watch the way that they blew some of these games, you know. So it's good that we're all getting a break. All of us here in the media, the players, the coaches, I'm sure they're all going to appreciate the hell out of the break. I'm looking forward to watching Tyler in the All-Star game and 3-point shootout. I think he's going to try to win the 3-point shootout. I think he's just a hunch. And even Hawkins, for as tough of a season as he had, is going to be cool. You know, it's cool to see him get recognized for rising stars. And it's a nice reminder, like, okay, yeah, there's still something there, right? Like it's like a reminder, like, yeah, he was really good last year. They so good last year that they're putting him in there again this year, despite how up and down he's been. So with all that being said, thank you once again to Brady for putting up with me going longer than I should. Thank you to our sponsors, to insuranceandstaffing.com. Thank you to realestateShop.com. Check out our Discord server. Link is in the description. And we're going to have you covered with podcasts even throughout this break. We don't stop here. We don't stop. So thank you guys. Have a good night. And yeah.